What's going on, everybody? Marvel Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. And today, folks, we are looking at Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 87. And today, folks, we are looking at part 2 to Silver Sable here. And so, folks, we saw from last issue how Silver Sable, she's working for Roxxon, and she made a deal to track down Spider-Man. But unfortunately, what we saw from last issue is that they didn't get the real Spider-Man. They kidnapped Flash Thompson. And so now we're picking up based on what happened from last issue, as well as the events that took place in the Ultimate Spider-Man Annual Number 1. If you haven't seen that issue, go ahead and pause this video and go back and watch that video, because a lot that took place in that issue is going to be covered in this issue. Because what we're going to focus on today is Peter Parker's new relationship with Kitty Pryde. And we notice that Mary Jane here is also wondering why Peter Parker is so happy. Why is he smirking? Why is he smiling? She said she's miserable because she still wants to be with Peter, but yet what we're going to see here is that Peter's in his own thoughts. He's thinking about dating an X-Men. He's dating Kitty Pryde. And he's like, wow, I can't believe this. Should I tell Aunt May about this? Because, Kitty Pryde and me, we're like the same age. We're like 16 years old. And I could just say we met at the mall. And so they're starting to talk, he's starting to think about all this when all of a sudden he's confronted by Kong here. Kong is wondering where Flash is at, and he says, hey, Peter, have you seen Flash? And Peter's like, well, let me check my underwear real quick. He said, I don't have an atomic super wedgie, so I guess that means I haven't seen him. And he's like, that's so weird. He isn't answering his cell. He always answers. And so he wears it on his belt. He said he loves his phone. He didn't make it to school, and he isn't answering. I'll try it one more time. So he dials, and this is where we pick up from last issue. We saw that Silver Sable drop kicked Flash Thompson. He fell to the ground here, folks. And so we see here that we're picking up from last issue where Silver Sable is now blaming her men because they got the wrong guy. They're supposed to be experts in this. They're supposed to be tracking down the real Spider-Man. But instead, folks, what we see here is that he's just a high school kid named Fred Thompson. He says, I want him to be gone. I need this boy to be gone. All the evidence needs to be scraped, because now he has incriminating evidence on us, and this is not good. So one of the agents, they're going to retell the story. They saw Spider-Man on top of that school building here when all of a sudden Spider-Man saw Flash, and that's the reason why they weren't able to get the real Spider-Man, is because Spider-Man knew of Flash's presence. So Spider-Man whipped up his backpack, and that's when Silver Sable's men attacked Flash Thompson. And they're still very confused. They think that maybe Flash Thompson is lying. Maybe he really is Spider-Man. And Silver Sable's like, you want to be slapped? He said, just tell us what you want us to do, Sable. And then she's like, your mistake. Get rid of it. He says, what do you want from me? This wasn't my mistake. I didn't do this. Get rid of it now. So they're talking. Flash Thompson opens his eyes. And while they're arguing, he's going to then shove them into each other. And he's going to make a run for it. And so Silver Sable's like, get him now. So they start shooting at Flash. But Flash dodges the bullets here. And she's like, move. And so they are hunting down Flash Thompson. But Flash made a beeline, and he is gone. And so now Silver Sable has to worry about Flash Thompson pressing charges here. So the next day at school here, we see Peter Parker is getting out of class. And guess who is going to surprise him? It is none other than Kitty Pryde. And Peter's shocked, and he's like, oh, what a surprise. And she's like, well, I was at the X mansion, I was bored, I was lonely, and I was thinking of you. And so I guilted Storm into flying me over here so I could spend 2 hours with you. And so Peter's like, wow, that's awesome. She says, well, what is you up to now? I'm going to call work and tell them I'm sick. She's like, oh, you don't have to do that. He says, I know. And so they go arm in arm, and guess who catches it all? Mary Jane. And so now Mary Jane knows that Peter has another love interest. And so we have a lot of jealousy going to start taking place with Mary Jane. And so Silver Sable and her crew learn of Flash Thompson's whereabouts, and their hope of not being discovered is just ruined now, folks, because now we see that Flash Thompson has an attorney, and we're going to learn here that Flash Thompson is going to sue Silver Sable, and they have actual incriminating video footage as well from school, from Midtown High School. And so we see that Silver Sable has no choice but to contact Mr. Roxxon. And so she tries, doesn't get an answer, and so she is going to personally see Mr. Roxxon in his limo. And she's like, you don't return phone calls anymore? He says, I was done speaking to you. And she's like, we're in the middle of a delicate transaction. You need commitment. Commitment to what? To what you did today? Am I expected to pay you for that? And then he tells his limo driver to get out of the limo. He said, out of the car, now. He said, I called, and we see Silver Sable's like, I called to tell you that, yes, we hit a bump, that we are fully committed to the assignment. He says, look, my reputation is everything to me. We'll finish the job for you. Okay? And then he's like, okay, you have 3 days. After that, I hire someone to clean this mess. So she has 3 days to get the real Spider-Man. And so we see here that Peter Parker is back at his house, and he's hanging out with Kitty Pryde here. They're in the basement. And while they're talking, he gets a phone call. He says, is that important? He says, oh, it's probably Aunt May. No, it's Mary Jane. And she's like, hey. And he's like, oh, hi. He said, are you watching TV? He said, what's on TV? So he turns the TV on. And that's when he's going to discover that Flash Thompson is going to be praised as a hero, because we see here that he was attacked by these special agents here. He was trying to be, cool about it all, and he said he was blamed for being Spider-Man when he's really not. And so we see Flash Thompson's getting all this fame, and he could possibly come out of this very rich. So a bunch of schoolmates, we have the principal, they're all interviewed, even Kong here. And this is not looking good for Peter, because now, because of the news and the media thinks that Spider-Man goes to Midtown High School. And so that's going to worry Peter a lot. And so he meets up with MJ the next day at school, and she's like, wow, can you believe it? And he's like, oh, keep your voice down, they could hear. He says, this is a whole nother nightmare. And then he's like, well, I'm not exactly the one to keep my mask on during a fight a lot of times. He says, look, I'm going to have to lay low. My costume is in my backpack, so it's not coming out. And so while they're talking, he's like, hey, why did you hang up yesterday? She looks down, and then she says, you had company. Oh, yeah, so I'm not retarded, okay? So Mary Jane knows about the relationship with him and Kitty Pryde. And the principal says, ladies and gentlemen, class started 5 minutes ago. Get to class. So we see here that Peter Parker walks back into the school, He's like, what could I have done? I can't tell her that I'm dating her because that would have broken Mary Jane's heart. And I mean, Kitty Pryde, she can take care of herself. She has superpowers, but Mary Jane doesn't. He's like, man, what am I obsessing over this for? And all of a sudden, he's stopped by the police, and the police ask Peter something he really doesn't want to hear. And that is, they want to see what's in his book bag. He says, it's a priority random bag check. He says, open it up. So what is going to happen, folks? Because he has that Spider-Man costume inside of his book bag. And so how in the world is Peter Parker going to get out of this predicament, folks? I don't see him getting out of this. So I would love to hear y'all's comments down below, what y'all think is going to happen up next. Comment down below, as well as give this video a like. And then if you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. That'd be much appreciated. And as always, keep reading comics.